Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another CompTIA A plus 1101 topic. Today we're looking at topic 3.1. I'm going to tell you pretty much everything you're going to need to know for your exam, and I'm going to give you some practice exam questions on everything we learned here today. So this video really, in theory, should be all you need to prepare for this topic. Let's get straight into it with 3.1. We're going to go ahead and look at network cables, the different types we have there, copper cables, peripheral cables, video cables, hard drive cables, adapters, and connector types. It's going to be a big video, but we're going to get everything we need to know out of this video. So let's jump straight into it with network cables, okay? In particular, we'll start with copper cables. So first up, copper cable. A type of copper cable is a twisted pair copper cable. Now, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, guys. If you have a look at the image here, you have multiple pairs of wires and they are twisted around one another. You might be thinking to yourself, why would you twist them around each other? There's actually a purpose to that. The twist reduces the chance of interference as the wire is constantly moving away from interference. So by twisting it around each other, you're always moving it away from the interference and therefore reducing any chance of interference at all, okay? So the purpose of that twist is to reduce interference. And another kind of side point here, each pair has a different twist rate, meaning they're not all twisted as tightly as one another. So they're all twisted at slightly different rates. I don't think they'll ask you about that in your exam, but definitely think about the fact that they twist them around each other to reduce interference. You might be asked about that. I imagine that might be on the scope of it. So now we're going to get into the Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a cabling. What are these? What do they mean? So these are forms of Ethernet cables. When you plug your wire into your computer in order to get an internet connection, you're using a category, one of these types of Ethernet cables, okay? There are other versions, but for the scope of this exam, this is all we need to know. So here we have category 5 and category 5e. Both of these cables support the 1000 base T Ethernet standard. Okay, you'll need to know that. You'll need to know their throughput, you'll need to know their frequency and their distance. Now, you'll probably notice that both Cat5 and Cat5e have these same stats, okay? So what's the difference? Insofar as what you need to know for the actual details of them, not a lot. Basically, Cat5e has some additional tests put through it, and has slightly better performance on some particular metrics. Insofar as the exam goes for Cat5 and Cat5e, all I think you really need to know what Ethernet standard they belong to. Definitely know that. Know the throughput, the frequency, and the distance. But other than that, the only concept you need to know is Cat5e is newer and has been put through some additional testing. And if you go into the store to purchase a Category 5 cable, Ethernet cable, you're going to be buying a Cat5e as opposed to a Cat5 because they don't really do Cat5 so much. Cat5e is the new Cat5, okay? So that's all you really need to know. I want to keep it short, simple, and concise, not to overload you with unnecessary information. That's all you really need to know. So next up, Category 6 and Category 6A, okay? This is where we jump up an Ethernet standard. Both of these cables support the 10 base T Ethernet standard, so that's important to know, okay? So 10 gigabit per second, 250 megahertz, and you'll need to know the distance, okay? So again, you're probably looking here, everything's looking pretty similar. It's pretty much the same kind of concept, only the only difference here is Category 6 is less expensive, while Category 6A stands for Category 6 Augmented, okay? So again, it's slightly better on some metrics. Now, insofar as the exam goes, you just need to know, as far as I want to put out there, I don't want to overload you with unnecessary information. The only thing you really need to know here for both of these is they belong or they support 10 base T, the throughput of them, and the distance and the frequency, okay? That's what you need to know. Other than that, the only concept, again, is Category 6A performs better on some particular tests, okay? It is the newer version. but you don't need to go into any tremendous amount of detail studying up on that for weeks and years. As far as I'm concerned, this is all you really need to know. Okay, now, coaxial cable is another form of copper cable that you need to know for the exam. A coaxial cable, or a coax cable, is the cable used to deliver television signals, and it looks like this. That's all you need to know, really. It's used to deliver television signals, and it looks like this, the coax cable. There you go, folks. You don't need to delve into any more information than that. Now, we talked about copper twisted pair cabling. Now we have shielded twisted pair. So this additional layer of shielding that you can see in this graphic here that I just grabbed off of Google Images, it's not mine, I grabbed it off of Google Images. This layer of shielding protects the wire from additional interference. So the exam specifically outlines direct burial cable as something you'll need to be able to identify and talk about. So what that is, it's essentially there's shielding around the pairs of wires, an additional layer of shielding, and that allows it to be buried underground. So if you need to connect building A with building B, you can bury it underground, and because it's shielded, it's protected from the weather, it's protected from any other kind of electrical interference as well. It's a added layer of shielding that will protect it from pretty much anything you can think that it might need to be protected from. That leads me to the unshielded twisted pair. Here, that second dot point, that's more common, right? You'd only get the shielded twisted pair if you necessarily need it because it's more expensive, okay? So that's all you're really going to need to know about that. We'll go ahead and move on to plenum. Now, the image here is of fire. There's smoke, and that's exactly what plenum is for. Plenum is a special type of network cable that is surrounded by, you don't need to know the specifics, but it's surrounded by a certain type of material that does not release toxic smokes or toxic fumes into the environment. And that means if there's a fire, it's not going to put people at an unnecessary risk. So if you have an area where you need to be fire safe, then you're going, or there's ventilation, right? If these wires are running through, cables are running through ventilation, that's where you might need plenum, okay? If your exam asks you anything about, it has to be fire safe, or it's in a ventilation area, it's going to need to be plenum cabling to reduce that risk of inhaling toxic fumes. That's all you need to know about plenum. Now, we also have optical fiber cables, okay? Now, these transmit data through light frequencies, and they can communicate a lot farther than copper cables can. So if you need to go a long way, you're going to need to go with fiber, particularly if you want to do it at high speeds. That being said, you don't get additional distance and additional speed without also having to pay more money for it, right? So it's, of course, more expensive. Now, there are two different types of this. You've got multi-mode fiber and single-mode fiber. So you can see in this image on the top, again, I just grabbed this from Google, this image in the top, you've got multiple different sources of light and they're kind of bouncing around, right? This cannot go as far as single mode fiber, which is just one accurate laser that goes straight all the way to the end. So if you want to go really, really far, you'll need to go single mode, but that is more expensive. If you don't need to go that far, you can go multi-mode, which is a little bit cheaper. So just understand the concept that multi-mode fiber can't go as far as single-mode fiber can. Now, finally, in this little subtopic, this is the last component, you have these standards. Now, these are standards on how cables should be wired. It specifies which colored wire should go on each numbered pin. If a wire is T568A on one side, it must also be T568A on the other side. And unless it's a crossover cable, but we will talk about that later. That's a different topic. Okay, so guys, essentially there's two, T568A and T568B. If a wire is T568A on one end, it also has to be T568A on the other. That's pretty much it. Now, all that means is it's a standard outlining what color wire is connected to what pin. Okay, so it's a way of making sure all wires are the same, essentially, and they abide by these standards. So T568A is going to be white and green, and then white and orange, and then blue, and then white and blue, and then orange, and then white and then brown. Whereas T568B is going to be white and orange, and then white and green, and then blue, and then white and blue, and then green, and then white and brown, and then brown. So you're going to need to really pause the video and take note of this, because there's a good chance you'll be asked a question relating to the standards. So the main things are, you do need to know the order of the colors in this. Unfortunately, I know it's a pain in the butt, but you do need to know that, and you need to just understand the concept of the purpose of these standards, which I just outlined there. Okay, so that being said, we're going to move on now to some questions. These are excerpts from my practice exams, my 5 practice exams that you can get over at journeytocyber.com. Okay, I promise I won't plug myself again. I probably will. So let's see what this question says and see how much we picked up there. Which of the following has a maximum distance of 55 meters when unshielded? A, Cat5, B, Cat5e, C, Cat6, or D, Cat6e? Pause the video if you need to. Your answer is coming up in 3, 2, 1. Here it is, Cat6, okay? So again, we have this table here that you should be familiar with. You should almost be able to draw this table out by heart, okay? Off the top of your head. You want to be able to try to draw this out, okay? You need to be able to, off the top of your head, say each of these details about Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, and Cat6a, right? That's what you want to try to be able to do. That's the goal. And you're probably going to get some questions on that, I can imagine. So definitely have that under control before you head in there. I spent a lot of time memorizing all of that. And I know it's a pain in the butt, but you got to do it. Okay, next question. It reads, you have been asked to give a presentation on internet technologies to a high school class. What should you tell them is responsible for reducing the chance of interference in a Cat5e cable? A, it is buried underground. B, it is always covered in additional padding, known as STP. C, the wires within the cable are twisted around each other. Or D, the cable uses a light source which is inherently resistant to interference. Your answer coming. Pause the video if you need to in 3, 2, 1. The answer is C. The wires within the cable are twisted around each other. That was one of the first things we talked about in this video so far. Okay, the wires are twisted to limit that interference. They're always moving away from sources of interference. Okay, so definitely understand that concept. All right, next question. It reads, in order to ensure the safety of all employees in the event of a fire, Ethan needs to install a special type of cable in the air vents of the company's office building. What is the name of this cable? A, twisted pair. B, shielded. C, plenum. D, fiber. Pause the video if you need to. Your answer in 3, 2, 1. There we go. It's plenum. We talked about that not too long ago. It was only moments ago. We talked about how plenum doesn't release those toxic fumes, okay? We're going to move on to peripheral cables. We've got USB 2.0, USB 3.0, Serial, and Thunderbolt. We'll move straight into it. Now, for USBs, you've got these 3 different types of connections. Micro USB on the left, mini USB in the middle, and USB A off to the right there, okay? You'll need to be able to visually identify those. And again, I just grabbed that image from Google. Now, USB 2, you got about 480 megabits per second, and then 5 meters maximum length, okay? And it's identifiable by its white. If you look at the inside of a USB 2, it will be white, and that's how you know it's not USB 3. So we'll go ahead and look at USB 3 to contrast that. You'll notice that is blue. So what that indicates is it's USB 3 compatible. So if you have a USB 3 device, you can plug it into that blue USB 3 port, and that will maximize the throughput, the efficiency of that, because you'll be utilizing the full capacity of USB technology. So usually up to about 3 meters, and significantly change the connector shape for micro and mini USB. All right. So again, that's just, we went through those different connector types for USB, the mini, the micro, and the USB A. Okay. So just think, so far, there's 3 different connector types, and then USB 2 is white, USB 3 is blue. Okay, that's mostly it so far. Now, here's the pain in the butt kind of topic here. USB 3 is currently at version 3.2, and there are different generations within that, and you need to know all of them. So you will need to know. Here we go. Are you ready? You will need to know USB 3.2 Generation 1 has a throughput of 5 gigabits per second. 3.2 Gen 2 has a throughput of 10 gigabit per second. USB 3.2 Gen 1 times 2 has a throughput of 10 gigabit per second, and then USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2 has a throughput of 20 gigabit per second. You will need to know that. I know it's super annoying, but it is going to be something that we have to try and do. But here was my little trick that I did when I was trying to study all this. I thought to myself, okay, these bottom two are just the top two times 2. So all I really need to know is these two. If I can just remember, 3.2 generation 1 is 5 gigabits, and 3.2 generation 2 is 10 gigabits, then I can figure out the other speeds just from the name of the generation. It's literally in the name. Generation 1 times 2, generation 1 is 5. 5 times 2, I think I did that in math class, that's 10. Okay, right? So you can really, if you just remember those two, and remember how your basic times tables work, you should be fine. So make sure you got that on lock. Then that takes us to the serial cable. You're mainly going to need to know what it looks like and what it's used for. So that's what it looks like. It is used for, or commonly used to connect to serial consoles on a switch, router, or other device in order to configure it. So you would connect into a network device, such as a switch or router, in order to configure it. Okay, that's what that is used for. Now, Thunderbolt is a high-speed serial connector and has multiple variations. It comes in a couple of different formats, and more specifically, there's 3 versions. So you can identify Thunderbolt compatible connections or ports with the Thunderbolt icon over the top there. Let's go into those 3 different versions of Thunderbolt that you will need to know. You'll need to know version 1 has a throughput of 20 gigabits per second, and it has 2 channels, each of which operate at 10 gigabit per second. Okay, and that uses a mini DisplayPort connector. Now, keep that in mind. Version 1 is 2 channels of 10 gigabit each, which totals 20 gigabits. Okay, version 2 only has 1 channel that does a total of 20 gigabits and uses a mini DisplayPort connector. So the reason that's different, because I got stuck on that when I was studying. No one was really telling me what that meant. Why is that important? What does that mean? So if you have 1 channel, basically it's more efficient data flow. It helps to eliminate bottlenecks in the data transfer process. So it's just a more efficient way, and you'll get better performance out of 1 efficient channel than you would out of 2 separate 10 gigabit per second channels. Okay, so that's basically why that's a good thing. And then we upgrade to version 3, which gets us to 40 gigabits per second and uses a USB-C connector. Okay, so make sure you've got that information on the screen right now down. You've got that in your head, and we'll go ahead and move on to some practice questions on this topic. Okay, the first question reads, you have been given the task of connecting to a network device with a physical cable in order to configure it. Which of the following cables should you use in order to achieve this? A, USB, B, Cat6, C, serial, or D, Firewire? Oops. Okay, your answer coming in 3, 2, 1, now. The correct answer is serial. We just went over this one. The serial cable is used to connect to a networking device physically in order to configure it. All right. You may very well get a question about that on your exam. Next question. This one reads, as a computer technician setting up a workstation, you are considering USB connectivity options. Which USB 3.2 generation offers a data transfer rate of 20 gigabits per second? A, USB 3.2 Gen 1, B, USB 3.2 Gen 2, C, USB 3.2 Gen 1 times 2, or D, USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2. Oh my goodness. Pause the video if you need to. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1. The correct answer was D, USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2. Okay, just again, you'll need to know those. Make sure you got those down. We'll go ahead and move on to video cables now, looking at HDMI, DisplayPort, digital visual interface, and video graphics array. All right, so really simple, guys. We've all seen an HDMI cable before. I'm sure we have, right? Most people have if you've used any kind of computers or display technology. So it's one of the newer ones. It has video and audio signals going through it. 19-pin connector, and you're looking at like a max of about 20 meters, but you're never really going to use it at 20 meters. Usually you're quite close to whatever you're plugging it into. You'll need to know what the port looks like and what the cable looks like as well. Okay, so make sure you can visually identify it. You understand that it is a newer cable. It uses 19 pins. It also gives video and audio signals. That's mostly what you need to know about it. Okay, DisplayPort gives video and audio signals and is compatible with HDMI and DVI. We'll talk about DVI next. Again, make sure you can visually identify it. You know that it's compatible with HDMI and DVI. You know that it does video and audio signals. Finally, DVI. There are multiple different types. Of course, there's always so many different types of things, and we need to know all of them. There are multiple different types of interfaces for this connection. You have three. DVI-D is digital signals, DVI-A is analog signals, and DVI-I is integrated, which means digital and analog in the same connector. It provides a video signal but no audio. In general, think of this as video signal but no audio. So what you'll need to be able to do is you'll need to understand the idea that there's three variations. You'll need to know that there's one for digital, one for analog, and one that does both, and that it's video and no audio signals, okay? You'll also, unfortunately, need to be able to visually identify what each of these are, okay? So I spend a lot of time Googling, and I would look at DVI, DVI-D, DVI-A, DVI-I, and I would draw them out on a piece of paper, and I'd sketch it until I could do it off the top of my head. That's how much I really got into this, but I passed on the first time, so, you know, pays off. So make sure you got this down. DVI-D, DVI-A, DVI-I. And there's another little graphic I pulled from the internet for you, okay? I did not make it, I pulled it from Google. Alrighty, and then finally we have VGA, which is much older. It's used for video signals, but does not transmit audio signals. It's an analog signal, and as the distance of the cord gets longer, the signal gets a little bit fuzzier. So the signal kind of deteriorates as the longer it travels, right? Kind of like me and you, that the longer we listen to this video, our mental health deteriorates. In the same way, the longer the data has to go over the cord, the more the image deteriorates. It uses a DB15 connector. Okay, just remember, VGA is a DB15 connector. It is older, and the quality is going to become more fuzzy the longer the cable is run for. Okay, we'll get into this more with the troubleshooting section, some issues that can go wrong, but that's all you need to know in terms of this particular exam objective. Now, which video cable, practice question. Which video cable interface supports both video and audio signals, has a 19-pin proprietary connector, and is often used for connecting modern devices to displays? A, DisplayPort, B, DVI, C, HDMI, or D, VGA? Your answer coming up. Pause the video if you need to. In 3, 2, 1. Here we go. The correct answer is HDMI. So guys, you'll need to know the differences between these, and you'll need to be able to answer this kind of question on these video cables. Okay. Another one for you. It reads, which video cable interface is known for being compatible with HDMI and DVI, supporting both video and audio signals, and can often be found on modern monitors and computers? A, DB9, B, DisplayPort, C, DVI, D, VGA. The correct answer, pause if you need to, is coming up now. Correct answer is B, DisplayPort. All right, so again, you'll need to know this. That, of course, wasn't going to be C, because, of course, DVI is compatible with DVI. DVI is DVI. All right, so make sure you know your cables. We'll move on to hard drive cables. We got SATA, SCSI, eSATA, and IDE. SATA and eSATA. I think we went over this in a previous video a little bit, but we'll do it again. This is used for connecting storage drives within computers. Now, SATA is the cable that you use to connect a storage drive if it's an internal drive inside the computer. eSATA is if you're connecting an external drive, a drive that's outside the computer. All right, SATA is inside, eSATA is outside. Further, there's, of course, as always, multiple different versions. You've got version 1 at 1.5 gigabit per second, version 2 at 3 gigabit per second, version 3 at 6 gigabit per second, and version 3.2 at 16 gigabits per second. And then eSATA is the same, but it has a 2-meter external cord as opposed to a 1-meter internal cord. eSATA has a different connector to SATA. We saw the difference in the visual connections there. And finally, SATA uses a 7-pin connector to deliver data and a 15-pin connector to deliver power. Okay, there's a table down there with that information in a nice, tidy format for you. Now we have SCSI. This can be used to connect storage devices, scanners, printers, etc. It's basically, guys, you can read these dot points if you want to, but I'll just tell you now, it is an older device and it could be used to daisy chain items together, which is basically where you connect one to one and then you can connect that to the other one and you create a chain of devices and they're all in the same chain. This dot point describes how that works. So each device on a cable is given its own ID number. If SCSI is connected to a drive array, it gives the array SCSI ID number, but also assigns each drive within that array a logical unit in order to differentiate between them. So it's a really cool thing, much older, not really used now. It has a 68-pin cable, but again, it was prior to SATA and USB, so super old, and it looked like this. All right, so it looks like this. You could daisy chain things. It was old. That's pretty much basic bare bones of what you need to know. IDE, or Integrated Drive Electronics, was the original name for the PATA standard, which was prior to SATA. So super old again, really, really old. It had a 40-pin connector, had high power consumption, and yeah, just really old. So older thing with 40-pin connector, not really used anymore. Now, some practice questions for you. I'm just getting a notification on my phone telling me I'm at 5% battery, so I'm hoping it holds out. The question reads, a new employee is talking about an older technology that was used to connect multiple peripherals to a device through daisy chaining. What technology are they talking about? A, SCADA, B, SATA, C, SCSI, or D, eSATA? Pause the video if you need to. Your answer in 3, 2, 1. Answer was SCSI. We just talked about how that could be used to daisy chain, okay? So make sure you know the stuff about all of those cables. Next question. Which of the following connectors uses a 40-pin connector? A, SCSI, B, IDE, C, SCADA, or D, SATA? Pause the video if you need to. Your answer in 3, 2, 1. IDE. So again, we talked about that. You will unfortunately need to know how many pins each connector uses. It's a pain in the butt, I know, but the exam's a bit of a pain in the butt. Let's be real. So, another question. It reads, you are putting together a computer and realize that you left a cable in the other room. This cable uses 7 pins to transfer data and 15 pins to deliver power. What cable did you forget? A, SCSI, B, SATA, C, VGA, or D, USB? Your answer, pause the video if you need to, coming in 3, 2, 1. It is SATA. So again, guys, you will need to know how many pins are used and what those pins are used for. Pain in the butt, but we got to do it. We got to know it. Finally, adapters. We've all used adapters before. If you've got a VGA cable, but you need to plug it into an HDMI input, you can get an adapter to use VGA, put it in HDMI. It's a pretty simple concept. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. That's literally all you need to know. That's it. Okay, for your exam, you might be asked a question. Just checking my battery here. 4%, we're okay. All right. You might be asked a question that says, you know, Julie has a VGA cable, but the input she needs to plug it into is HDMI. Whatever could she do? Yeah, you could use an adapter, right? That's an option. Now, finally, our connector types. Going to go through all of these. Going to be pretty quick and economic about it, because again, guys, I want to give you just the information you need for your exam. I'm not going to get into unnecessary details. We're going to talk about only what you need to know, because I want you to pass. I don't want you to sit here all day writing unnecessary details down. All right, RJ11 is used for connecting telephones or DSL connections. So remember, DSL internet connections we talked about before use already existing telephone lines. So you would use a RJ11 cable to connect your DSL internet connection or to connect telephones. RJ45 is used to connect to Ethernet. So that is the physical cable that you plug into your computer to get a wired internet connection. It looks like that. F-type is the coaxial cable connection. It's used to connect cable television and cable internet. All right, so if you have a cable internet connection, you'll use an F-type. Or if you have television that needs to be connected, you will use an F-type connector, which is used on a coaxial cable. Alrighty, straight tip is a fiber connector with one bayonet style connection. So I just simply remember this one. It's a straight tip. It's very straight. It looks like you might get stabbed with it if it were to hit you. You then also have subscriber connector, or SC, which is another fiber connector that has a square shape. I remember this simply by thinking SC is SC, square. So stabbed, square. And then you have the LC connector, which is another fiber connector that has two interfaces, one for transmitting and one for receiving. You might be thinking this is square as well, but this is LC. And this little thing that it has up the top here is like a little locking mechanism. So I remember this by thinking LC, lock. If it has a lock, it's LC. All right, so that's my little memory thing. A punch-down block is a wiring panel where wires are physically pushed into the block using a punch-down tool. All right, just know basically what a punch-down block is. If someone describes something where wires are punched down into, you know what's a punch-down block, okay? Don't really need to go any more in-depth than that. Finally, micro USB connects to modern mobile devices. This is still kind of relatively widely used as insofar as your exam is concerned. This is a modern connection, okay? Mini USB, pretty old, super old, get it out of here. It's used to connect to mobile devices, but it is an older connection. It's chunky. It's a chunky connection, right? And then the USB-C is 24 pins. This is revolutionary because it can be plugged in any direction, upside down or not upside down. But which way even is upside down? USB-C doesn't know, and it doesn't need to because it doesn't care. It can be plugged in anyway. It has a faster speed than other USB connectors and can transmit multiple signal types. Okay, USB-C looks like that. Molex powers multiple devices inside the computer. So you plug in a Molex cable to power the actual computer itself. All right, and then we have the Lightning port. 8 pins. Proprietary to Apple. If it is an Apple device, it's going to be using a Lightning port. An Apple mobile device will use Lightning. All right, it can be plugged in any direction, just like the USB-C, and it has a higher power output than micro USB. Alrighty, DB9 has 9 pins, sends RS-232 signals, and looks like this. Okay, my battery's on 3%. Okay, let's get through these questions, then we're all good to go. The question reads, as a tech-savvy individual, you are looking to connect your mobile devices efficiently with a versatile connector that offers bi-directional plugging, allowing insertion in any orientation. Which connector type best fits your requirements for connecting mobile devices? A. RJ11, B. USB-C, C. F-type, or D. DB9. Pause the video if you need it. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1. The answer is USB-C, which was B. Okay, bi-directional. You can plug it in upside down, any way you want. Okay, next question reads, Alice's friend has just asked her to go upstairs and get a cable so she can charge her iPhone. But when Alice goes upstairs, she sees a wide variety of cables to choose from. Which cable should Alice bring her friend? A. Micro USB, B. Mini USB, C. Lightning, or D. USB-C. Pause the video if you need. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1. It is Lightning. It is a Apple device. Alice's friend has just asked to go upstairs and get so she can charge her iPhone. iPhone is Apple, which means it's going to use Lightning. Lightning is a proprietary connection cable. Next question asks, what is the purpose of a Molex connector? A. Provide power to the motherboard. B. Provide data via SCSI. C. Provide rapid elasticity to servers. Or D. Provide data to the GPU. Pause the video if you need to. Your answer in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. It is A, to provide power to the motherboard. A Molex connector provides power to the motherboard. You're going to need to know what each of those do. Now, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, if you found this useful, all of the text excerpts, I pulled some images from Google, but all of the actual questions and the written information has been excerpts from my practice exams and learning guides. So head over to journeytocyber.com if you want to grab these resources. This is what I wish I had when I was studying. I had to piece everything together on my own, right? Now, you can get practice exams with performance-based questions. Look at this, you have to figure out everything and make sure you've really got it in your head. You are not going to be able to pass my practice exams unless you know what you're doing, okay? Multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. And further, I also have a performance-based question simulation in the form of a PDF file with clickable buttons available. Now, you can see what that might look like here briefly. Each of these buttons are clickable, right? And you'll also have one like this where you have to click on each person, identify what their issue is, how you can confirm if that's the issue, and then recommend an action to them. And there's one for objective 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5, 5.6, and 5.7. Okay, all the troubleshooting objectives. So check that out if you want. And finally, my learning guide, which everyone is loving at the moment.
And my phone just died, everybody, so I'm here on audio. Hopefully it's okay. I've switched over to my headset microphone. You can also grab my learning guide, which everyone seems to be loving at the moment. I'm getting a lot of good feedback on that. You've got coverage of each individual dot point within each individual exam objective. You've got comprehensive notes. You've also got learning activities. You've got active recall questions and simple questions with answers as well. So it's really going to help you break down into the individual exam objectives and see exactly what you need to work on, okay? And you can use the code I Want now over there at journeytocyber.com and grab the Ultimate Success Bundle, which will give you all of that. That'll give you 10% off all of that. So if that's something you're interested in, head over and have a go at that. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.